why is it that you think there aren't more women killing it on big stages globally? I just asked the question. It went nuts.
Hello and welcome to Celebrating You, and I am so excited to have Lovelda Vincenzi with us here today. You are in for such a treat. Welcome.
Hey, woohoo! Interview time.
Welcome, and hi.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Oh,
I love a good chit chat.
This is my total pleasure. And I would love to know, tell me exactly what you do and how you got to be doing all the amazing things that you do, if that were possible in one interview. Go.
Let's just stick with stuff I'm doing now rather than, we're not going to go back to, when I was 5, because we could be here a while.
Okay.
So I'm an international moderator, MC and host, an entrepreneur, a speaker mentor, and recently a podcaster. Basically what that means, I'm on a mission to unleash as many authentic, powerful female voices onto the world as possible. I'm kind of aiming for the thousands, let's just go for the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, but a minimum of like 100,000 in my lifetime feels good. So I started off as a professional MC. So let me pause. First, I worked in corporate for ages. My last corporate gig was in sales. I was working in sales for 8 years before I eventually quit to go full-time as a MC, moderator, and host. And that basically means that my job is to introduce people onto stages, moderate panel discussions and conversations. And I do that in the UK and abroad. And my unique kind of superpower in that is effectively to kind of bring energy to a stage. So I am the person organizers hire when they want high energy, but I'm also an event organizer myself. I run the Female Speakers Conference. It was designed to focus as a conference for women, by women, around the business of speaking, to get more female voices out there. And that's not the only conference. I mean, I've done loads of conferences before that. I have like this event organizer bug. So when it came to emceeing and moderating, I kind of see things from both perspectives. I can understand the organizers' stresses and all of those things that are running through their head and the multiple different things that they're having to organize. So I'm like, let me handle the front of house. It'll be one less thing for you to concern yourself with. And when as I was doing that, I genuinely had no desire to be a feminist, a female. I really was not about standing for anything in particular. I'll be honest. I was not that child who like woke up and, there's some people that are really rallying for something. Yeah, that wasn't me. Not that that was not where I was coming from. But I was moderating a discussion. I was emceeing an event. It was an all-female event. And there was a panel. I was helping to facilitate a panel discussion. And one of the ladies in the audience asked a very innocent question, actually. She asked, I can't even remember the precise question. I just remember my reaction to the question. The question was something to do with speaking and getting on stages. And I found myself getting on my little soapbox and saying, you ladies, you need to go out more and you need to get on stages because there's all these panels and it's just men and you're all powerful. And I caught myself, remembered it wasn't my event to pipe down and get back into my, get off my soapbox, hand it back, get back to my normal role. Like, I'm not quite sure what took over me. And that was probably about 2 years ago. That was 2018. And it stuck with me. So a couple of weeks later, at this point, my Facebook profile was, it was like a graffiti wall for everybody else. I'd hardly put anything on Facebook at all. I really was kind of disengaged. I was just focusing on emceeing. I wasn't playing too much with Facebook at all. Most of the stuff, if you skimmed through my Facebook profile at the time, was other people promoting stuff and tagging me in their shit, right? But it was bugging me. So I just put a post on Facebook saying, why is it that you think there aren't more women killing it on big stages globally? I just asked the question. It went nuts. I had like over 100 comments, and that's 100 comments on a dead page, right? Like, because I hadn't been using it. I had like over 100 comments. And I had all manner of responses. Some of them were, women are shyer and imposter syndrome, and, it's more difficult because it's a man's world. And I paid very little attention to those because I just thought, it doesn't really sit with me. But what did jump out was there were a few comments from organizers or promoters. And what they said was, the truth is female speakers are just really hard to find. And I was like, so what? Nah, I know loads of female speakers. That can't be the case. So I then started, I whipped up a Facebook group, called it World Class Female Speakers, invited as many women as I could find to it. I think people thought I was starting to become a speaker agent. Have you got a gig? I was like, no, babe, let me tell you what it is. Basically, it's like a secret community at the time. I was like, basically what it is that I hear that female speakers are really hard to find, but I'm struggling to believe that because I know lots of female speakers. So I thought if we all got together, we could figure out what the hell is going on. And it turned out those people who said female speakers are harder to find, they didn't lie. They didn't lie. So what I came to see as I'm running this, I didn't know what the heck the group was about at the time. But I would ask people, I think I started asking people, when it first dawned on me is when I said, oh, ladies, maybe we should share each other's YouTube channels. And it was a pretty engaged group, and I just got crickets. And I thought, what's this about? I'm talking to a friend of mine, and I said, is it that they don't have YouTube channels or something? And the more I started digging into it and talking to people and talking to these female business owners, speakers, predominantly, saying, oh, I'm running a speaking business, I speak all the time and I want to get on more stages, they genuinely had nothing. Like there was no marketing, there was no sales effort. When we did the first female speakers conference, we put out a post, a call for speakers, and all of these people applied. We had like 100 applications, and I'd be going through the applications and I'd read one and I'd be like, damn, that's really exciting. And I'd click on the link, get to the page, and it's like a coach. And as an organizer, I'm looking for show me you speaking. There's nothing on that page that says they're speaking. So now I'm on Google and then I'm on YouTube, and I was like, y'all don't have to make this shizzle hard. So that's kind of how it's like a long story to how I ended up doing what I do. So I work with female, as well as emceeing and running my own speaking business, I work with female speaker business owners to get found, booked, and paid as speakers using what I've used to build my speaking business in about 18 months. So I was working full-time at the time. Yeah, seriously. I was working full-time at the time. So I was having to take time off to go do these gigs. I was working full-time. I was, and I didn't have a website. I didn't have, I wasn't a household name or anything like that. I was just this kid who decided to start emceeing. But I got really clever, and within 18 months, I'd introduced Monica Lewinsky and interviewed her on stage. I'd introduced the CEO of Unilever. I'd introduced, Nick Kershaw, who's like an 80s pop star. So there's like a whole host of names. But I'd go onto my LinkedIn page some days and just find a notification from somebody in like Paris or, somewhere else in Europe. And they find me and say, do you want to come and MC our event? And I would look at our connections, and we were literally not connected to any of the same people. So I know that this stuff works. I know that you don't need to be a whiz for it to work. And to me, I'm a real advocate for balanced discussion. And I simply cannot see how that can happen when 50% of the population is grossly underrepresented on large stages talking about things that have an impact to the whole population. I feel like we need to have that mix. And I'm not anti-men. I just kind of go, we can complain about the status quo, and we can complain about our upbringing and our programming and all of that shit, or we can pull our finger out and do something about it. And my mama just taught me to work with the situation, pull your finger out, and do what you can and work on what you do have control over. And as far as I'm concerned, you have control over what people find about you on the internet, especially when you can put that out and what your digital profile looks like, and you have control over how you sell yourself. And if you're not doing either of those things, if you aren't reaching out to organizers, and if you're not, and if you have nothing, like you haven't put any real effort into at least putting up a shop that's consistent with who you are as a person, then you can't complain about not getting on the stages. You just can't. You're making it really, really difficult in a space where there's a huge opportunity, because organizers are more and more kind of waking up to looking for female speakers. I'm like, the first ladies who wake up and get on this, they're going to be killing it. Absolutely killing it. So that's just like a super long response to like all the different things that I do and why I do them.
Amazing. I had no idea. First of all, congratulations. That's the most impressive journey. To you committed to it, you went for it, you were working full time. That's really, really inspiring. So first of all, big up to you, girl.
Thank you.
That's really, really committed. And I had no idea. I mute myself, by the way, because I'm going, what? No way, in over this side. So as to let you speak, I'm muting, but you'll notice I'm making all these gestures. I had no idea that 2 years ago there were not many females. And likewise, I'm not a fem. I think men and their energy and their voices are very important. I don't ever exclude men. I love them and respect them very dearly. And I've been around the leadership circuit for many years. There's not many of us animals around, and we are part of this here life. So, but 2 years, not a lot. And what's brilliant is that you've come from the event managing perspective. So you were in that industry, and wow.
I think I was blessed in some way. So I came from an event management industry. I mean, I've done couture fashion shows for people, and I just was this person. I love pulling off an event. So I get what it takes and the level of commitment those organizers and everybody involved in the team is putting in. But then I also stumbled into sales. So when it came to selling myself, it wasn't that difficult. Like if I know a product works, I have no problem being a little bit cheeky and pushing the envelope with a price. And so I get that that's a distinct advantage I had that perhaps other women who haven't worked in that space will struggle with. This idea of, what do I charge and how do I charge? Oh, but they said that they're a charity. I'm like, do you think charities don't have rents to pay and Amazon delivers stuff to them for free? Like, they have to pay for stuff. Like, charity and nonprofit does not mean no money. Now, it may mean that they are much more, there's a huge amount more scrutiny around how they spend that money. And you really do have to justify value for them to dig deep into their pockets to find you. But I've worked with charities before where they've wanted to take me on for free, and I've just sat with it and gone, it's incongruent. Like I know if I turn up to something and I don't feel like I'm being fairly compensated for it, and I can't argue if I accepted the compensation, if I accepted zero and I show up and I know that I'm going to feel a certain sort of way about it, and I don't deliver as well. It's just not as congruent for me. So I would rather turn it down, because it's a lot of work. Like, people think you just turn up and you introduce. There's a lot of work that goes in beforehand to be prepared to do the introductions and to interview people effectively, and to understand the event, because it's not just what happens on stage. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes and a lot of changes. So you really do have to be on point. And what I noticed, I've completely lost my train of thought there. What was I saying, girl? I'm like lost. What happened?
Lots of amazing things about the back end, the production end, and your perspective on that. Lots of people struggle with selling themselves or their services, and because you've come from a sales environment, okay, you've got some experience of that, but then when it comes to selling what you offer, you come across as that's comfortable for you. But do you want to just maybe share a little bit? Because I know that everybody watching this is going, I need this, like me too.
Look, it was not always comfortable. The very first this is probably iteration. I need to sit down and actually count how many businesses I buried. Like, it didn't work. They just didn't work. And the very first kind of soiree, I suppose, I had with business, I started a company called the Dined Events, and it was like an entrepreneurial dinner organizing, like dinner networking, right? And when I first started it, I wasn't quite working in sales then, I don't think. I think it was prior to me moving into my very first sales role. And I'd hired a sales coach because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I had this great idea of what I was going to get up to. And he was like, great, so do you have an audience? And I was like, what? He said, so how are you going to sell it? And I said, that's why I'm paying you. It was actually my response. And he said, but Lovelda, how do you know anybody wants this? And I was like, I need to know that. Like, it's a good idea. So he had me go and start that business by just inviting people to see if it would be a really cool experience. So I just called up a bunch of my entrepreneurial-minded friends and said, look, I'm doing this dinner for my entrepreneurial friends. Like, would you want to come along? I think I got about 20 people to the first one. It was really nice and simple. And everybody just paid individually for their food. So it was just like getting entrepreneurial friends together. And then I thought, right, I should probably charge for this. And I think I charged something like £25 per head for the first one of these. And oh my gosh, was it difficult. I remember I was doing these at the peak of that business for about £75 each. I was making £20 per person because the food, when I say I was doing it for that price, it was a 3-course meal because, you know, here's my event organizing background. It was a 3-course meal with a drinks reception at the beginning. And then I'd bring speakers in as well. It was a huge amount of effort. But I really struggled the very first time I put a price on it. And interestingly, I don't think I struggled anywhere near the same amount when I put the price on emceeing. And looking back, the big distinction between the two is I couldn't really wrap my head around personally the value of the dinners. Even though, and it didn't matter how much I would push out and people could tell me about it, I couldn't wrap my head personally around it. emceeing for me, I've been speaking on stages since I was 13. When it comes to speaking and organizing, there is like sweet zero doubt. You can, and when I say yes to speaking gigs, I said yes to reviewing the news, and I don't even watch the freaking news live on TV. So when it comes to doing a speaking arrangement, I have zero doubt about my capability to deliver. Even when I'm stretching myself, I'm like, I know I've got this. Like this I have. But I didn't start with huge fees. I mean, the first couple of gigs, I think I charged people 75 quid, 100 pounds. I mean, it was stupid. By the way, you can't get me anywhere near that price now. You can't even get a one-to-one with me for that price now. But I was charging those sorts of fees initially. I didn't know what the number was. I think the first person who said, so, how much do you charge for this? Because I worked in sales, I had interesting ways of buying me time. So what I would say was, I priced on a case-by-case basis, which basically was it was basically a nice line that was, let me go away and think about that, but it sounds like I know what the frick I'm doing, because really what would happen after that is I'm like, shit, who MCs? How much does this market charge? Like, what's a reasonable price? What can I get away with? How am I going to price it up? But what I will say for those listening who perhaps this idea of pricing is something you've struggled with, or an idea of asking for money is something you've struggled with. The biggest shift that I get from my clients is in helping them understand that you're negotiating a deal of which the price is part of the package, right? It's not, so we kind of see it as, and most people don't negotiate, they barter. Because bartering is when you kind of go, here's a number. It's what you do in the freaking marketplace. Here's a number. And then you just keep the thing the same, but you just keep bringing the price down, right? So they don't negotiate. Negotiation goes something like this. So, it's going to be $2,000, let's say. And they say, oh, I don't have $2,000. You go, fine. If you write all of my notes and you give it to me pre-prepared, then I can do something about the price, right? The value is the same. So what I would assign a value, or it would be like, okay, cool. If you got a professional videographer, because I ain't got no video footage. Cool. So if you will give me that footage, I will discount the price subject to the footage. So now the footage is worth that amount. Or fine, I will do fewer hours, or fine, but when you are just, there's no negotiation, and then you're just undermining, there's no value. When you kind of go, this is the total package this is totally how much value it is, and you can negotiate on multiple different things, it makes sense. One of my mentors in the early days used to say, every number is a negotiation point. So that's dates, that's times, that's number of locations, that's duration. Every single number is a point of negotiation. But often the only point of negotiation when it comes to selling that people stick to is the price. It's the only number they're negotiating. And if the only number you're negotiating is price, you're not negotiating, you're bartering. Because in sales, what I would do if I was working with a client and they wanted the price down, I just took shit out. They go, whoa, but I want this stuff. Well, that's how much it is. But if you want it for less, then I'm not going to do the same amount of work for less money. So where's the exchange? And sometimes the exchange is monetary. Sometimes it's in removing things from the service. Sometimes the exchange was in marketing assets. When I first started, because people would say, I never want to speak for free. I'm like, girl, please. If Oprah called you tomorrow and said, I'm doing a show, you're going to have to fly yourself out here live. You need to be here in 2 days' time, but I'd love to interview you, but you're not going to get paid. If anything, is going to cost you money. Are you telling me you'd be like, nah, boo, I don't come out for free? So when people tell me I don't speak for free, I'm like, BS, because under the right circumstances where the value proposition is right for you, it will not feel like an imposition. It feels like an imposition when it's a nobody event in the back end of nowhere with the wrong audience for you, at a time that's inconvenient for you. That's when it feels like an imposition, and you're like, the price is the price is the price. So when you can start to expand what you see as your value and look at the total value versus just the price, and keeping the package, because the problem is always when you keep the package exactly the same and you just move the number. No, you move the deal. You move the deal so the value is the same.
That's such an amazing distinction. So the distinction between bartering the price of a specific series of items, or negotiating the variables within that. That's really, really good distinction. And it's an interesting point that you talk about negotiation on value. So what would you say because money is an exchange of value. So in terms of, I don't really know what the question is, but it feels like it's something about,
how do you determine that?
Yeah, exactly. Or what's your feeling about that? Yeah.
So I'm in that mix where I'm kind of a little bit well, in some ways I'm highly intuitive, and it was a skill that took ages. Like I have friends now like, oh my God, Lovelda, you told woo. I'm like, it was always there. I just buried the heck out of it. But I'm also very practical, because business is business, and cash money, is actually what matters. I mean, not the only thing that matters, but in order to have a business, there needs to be money moving through it. In order for me to have an impact and to be able to serve more people, I need to be bringing stuff in such that I can give it to other people, right? And when it comes to picking a number, I remember way back in the early days, I'd have people go, I don't know what to charge. And I'm like, okay, cool, charge £10. And they're like, no, that's too low. I said, well, you must have an idea then. You must know, because I've just given you a number and you're telling me that one's shit. So I said, fine, charge 20,000. Oh, I can't charge that, Shmat. So I said, so how much is it then? Tell me what it is. Tell me what it is that feels right for you. And then I go, now add 20%. Whatever that number is, add 20%. And one of my clients recently said, she goes, that's really interesting. It's the same amount as VAT. And I said, it hadn't occurred to me that it was the same as tax in the UK. But the reason I say to add 20%, look, if you're happy with charging £100, call it 120, right? And the reason for that is the only way you get to keep increasing your prices if you're always going that stretch above. Because in a negotiation, if you're happy to give it for 100 anyway. But whatever the first number is out of your mouth, darling, that is your starting point. period. So if the first number out of your mouth is a negotiation against yourself, and what I mean, oh, it's strong, huh? What I mean by that is you're on the phone with a client and they've sold you a story, because somebody's selling somebody, right? Sometimes you're selling them, other times they're selling you, right? They've sold you a story and you're buying it. You're like, they sold you a story about how life is hard and things are really tough right now. And, you know, they've just come out of hospital, a story. And that's not to say that there may not be facts behind that, but they're selling you a story. They're basically selling you a story of an inability to access money, which you interpret as an inability to get creative to find any funds. And therefore, in order to get them, they're not going to be able to afford you. So you've now jumped 16 freaking steps ahead of the process rather than staying where you are. And you've made assumptions. And now the first word out of your mouth is to negotiate against yourself, because they haven't even asked for a discount yet. You just give it them. Negotiate against yourself. And rather than say £1,000, you say 600. You know it's supposed to be 1,000. You say 600. You know what's going to happen? They're going to want to come down from whatever the first number is that came out of your mouth. And I know this, like, it doesn't matter what company I've ever worked with, whatever the first damn number out of your mouth is, that's the number they see as the price. And you have to learn to state your fee and shut the hell up. Shut up. And it's uncomfortable. But I watched my husband do this in action a few weeks ago. I say watched, he was on a call. I wasn't listening into the call. I'd gone to get something from the bedroom because he's been using the bedroom as his office. And I heard him say a number, and then there was this long, crickety silence. And he's on a Zoom call. So whoever it was looking at him and he was looking at them, and it was just silence. For it must have been at least 15 seconds. Just silence, nothing. And there's two reasons for it. One, sometimes you say a number and somebody's just processing it. So why are you jumping in? It didn't mean they were going to say no, they're just processing it. But the first person who speaks after that is normally the person who's going to win the negotiation. So just shut up. You said your piece, just shut up. You know, my fee's X amount, and just let them sit there with it. And the truth is, most of the time when you break that silence, what you say is something that's going to undermine your fee. 9 times out of 10, for women especially, what comes out next is, oh, but I know that you're really struggling, so I'll undermine my fee. It'll be something that is not going to, it's just going to undermine your fee. So the only thing you could say again is maybe repeat the price. But literally, you know, there are very few things that you can say in that circumstance that is going to strengthen your position. Normally what comes out of your mouth is something that's going to take you immediately down the avenue of discounting the price.
That's so, so powerful. I'm really curious to know, how has your journey into selling your services, because it started, now you help other people, but how has your own growth of self-empowerment, present yourself and putting a number on that, how has that journey been in terms of how you perceive yourself and your value in this world?
I think for me, I played the game for a little while of charge the big price, because that's what everybody does. And what I found was, and I'd been told this, but then I experienced it. Your energy sells before your words, right? So if you say a number and everything about you is like, girl, please. You know what I mean? When a number comes out of your mouth and every cell in your body is kind of like, come on now. Yeah, there were very few people who can genuinely be that cheeky and get away with it, where they're really aligned to it. But most of the time, what happens is people feel your discomfort, and they feel like, and so what hits them is an incongruency, and it normally results in a lack of sales. So for me, firstly, it was starting where I felt comfortable and then adding a little bit, but then always questioning the art of what's possible. Because what can happen when you're in a circle with a group of people for a while is you start to believe that there's a ceiling that isn't really a ceiling. It's just a ceiling based upon your current perceptions, your current interactions, your current positioning, your current market value. But it's not true that it's not possible, right? The same way, like a bag does the same thing. And you have everything from free to like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds for something that is literally just designed to carry things. And why do they have those differences in price? Because they appeal to very different markets, and they understand that those different markets are looking for different things. They position in a different place. You do not get to sell, understand that there are certain price point jumps in which things slow down before they speed up. And because you were having a lot of traction here and things were working very well in that particular way, when you go in a different market, it doesn't work the same. Just the same way that selling an Armani handbag or selling a Louis Vuitton handbag, you do not sell them in the same way that you sell the £5 bag that perhaps can fit in the market or in a discount store. You know, nobody's there to describe anything to you. There's no customer service specifically around it. You pick it up, you have a look at it, and away you go. But when you're selling at the top end, there's a different experience, and there's a different group of people, and there's a different time scale sometimes that it takes to close those people. And what's important to them is different from the people that used to work before. So often what happens when, like for me, when I started increasing my pricing, especially around coaching, I had to shift my message, because what happens is it's almost as if we inadvertently start speaking to the person who doesn't have any money. Are you struggling? Are you struggling? Would you ready to make your first 5K month? That language, you're going to find the person to which that is their freaking aspiration. You're not going to appeal to the person who's landing 10K every month, because that message doesn't land for them. Am I struggling? The message that lands for them, things are consistent. You've been doing pretty well, but actually you've topped out and it's time to scale. Like, we're done with 50Ks. This is supposed to be your 10, 20K months. That's what we're supposed to be doing now. But the person who's in that space, the person who's struggling doesn't resonate with that message, right? The person who can't afford an Armani handbag is not, maybe they might come around to look at it aspirationally, but they're not in that shop like seriously hunting, right? They'll cruise around a little bit, but most of the time they won't engage in any sort of real sales conversation, because they don't have the ability to do it, right? And so you've kind of got to understand that your messaging, it's not that the audience isn't there, or it's not necessarily that it's not a possibility. The other way I'll put this is, if I take emceeing, when I first started, I did this sensible thing and went around and met other people. I was like, okay, cool. Tell me, how much do people charge? And I remember there were a couple of guys that I spoke to at the time, one in particular who's purely an MC, like that's what he does. And I remember him telling me that the market kind of tops around £300-400. That's really all you can get away with. Occasionally, maybe you can get like $1,000 or something like that, but those are really like, out there deals. Like, this is the bulk of the market. This is how it works. And if I'd taken that to be true, I would not be doing what I'm doing now at all. No chance in hell. No chance. Because he was speaking from his current perspective in the world. Now, I fast forward, I got a new group of friends, and I find myself in I have moments, limiting mindset. And I'm like, MCs, maybe they don't get paid as much as speakers. And my friend was like, Lovelda, I know MCs are getting like 20K. And I'm like, okay, time to change, time to switch it up and think about that a little bit differently. But it's not the same people. It's not the same people who are, if I look at who I serve now versus who I was serving with when my fees were lower, it's a completely different group of people, because it's a completely different market space. But if I'd kept staying in the space of a couple of £100 here and there, I'd have still been doing those sort of smaller events. And does that mean that at whatever price point you're at, people are going to want to freaking hustle anyway, right? It doesn't actually matter whether you're charging 100K or you're charging a K, right? Somebody is going to want to negotiate with you or hustle. Or people are not going to have the money regardless of what freaking price point you're at. So that shouldn't be the reason that nobody's got money, right? You just the reward is bigger at the end of it. But it then comes back to what I said earlier around your ability to negotiate the whole deal, not just on the price.
Absolutely. Amazing, epic flyover vision on the psychology and getting to know that whole sales animal. Like just getting to know what it eats, what it likes to do, how it relaxes, how it works, how it plays. Like that was such a comprehensive going into that world. That was such a masterclass. People are so lucky to watch this. This is such a masterclass.
I think you saying that also just reminds me there isn't one way to sell. It doesn't exist, right? And I remember even when I used to joke with some of my clients when I worked in corporate, I'm like, you ain't never met nobody like me. Like, because I just used to, there's things I can do as a salesperson that somebody else probably could not get away with. And I can do it because of my personality or because of the nature of the relationships that I've built, but somebody else perhaps couldn't get away with it. So selling is not about turning yourself into somebody that you're not. It's not a matter of it's got to be this hustle and it's got to go through. It's got to be your language and authentically you in asking stuff in a way that works for you. But here's the thing, you've also got to understand that sometimes that means putting on your big girl panties and asking the question. It's going to be, if you're not used to it, it's going to be uncomfortable. It wasn't always comfortable to me. I don't think even somebody working in sales for 20 years, it's always comfortable. Because when you're in the heat of that negotiation, there's a fine line. There's a really fine line between pushing the boundaries and pissing somebody off. And you've got to kind of work it out. But if you can get to the place where you can play with that and be okay with it, and and be in your power with it. So little things like when I was in corporate sales, I would take a note of how quickly a client would respond to me. And if they were slow at responding, sometimes I would deliberately see something and leave it a day. Because here's the thing, let me put it to you differently. If you were freaking booked out, would you answer every single sales inquiry immediately? A day or two is not going to kill things. 2 weeks will. Like 2 weeks is going to dry up a warm lead. But if you were absolutely maxed to the hilt, and if you were, for those of you who are more spiritually connected, tuned in, tapped in, enlightened, for want of a better word, what might serve you when it comes to selling, and it's not just selling in any area of your business, is to think about who you would be being if you were at the level that you're aiming for, right? If you were actually currently playing at the level that you're aiming for, how would you engage with this prospect? Really? Would you answer that call straight away? Would you feel compelled to answer on the weekends? Or if you were performing at the level that you're aiming for, would you be able to just sit back and take a breather? Would you discount the price to the same extent if you were performing in that level? And the more you can step into and embody and behave like and take the actions of that version of yourself, that future version of yourself who's doing it and is in it, the quicker you'll get those results. But for as long as you're in this space, wanting to think about what it would be like in that space, still acting from this space, it's going to take longer because that woman is not doing the same shizzle that this woman is doing. She's doing something different. So you start doing what she's doing, being like she's being, and taking the actions that she'd take, you become her quicker, right? Because then you're her.
So you're moving into higher self or the best version of yourself more consciously. That's So awesome. Tell us about what you do. Like, do you speak yourself, or you help women to get on the speaker circuit, start to ask for what they are, the value? What kind of results, what experiences?
You're like, how does it work?
You're going to be like having a really wet appetite right now.
So I MC, if you're doing an event and you're looking for an MC or host, moderator, online conferences, whatever, like get in touch. I love that stuff. You can also stay connected if you're interested in you like this sort of stuff and you want to hear other words of wisdom from other women. I've interviewed over 40 of them for my new podcast called The Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. Lovelda.com/podcast, and you can find it there, or go onto Spotify. It's not yet, hopefully by the time this is out, it'll be on Apple. It's not yet on iTunes. It's definitely on Spotify, or Lovelda.com/podcast. For those of you listening where you're like, the speaking thing though, Lovelda, like, tell me about the speaking thing. How does that bit work? So I work with women in two parts in terms of working in their speaking. So it's their marketing and sales. And I'm purely working on the business side of speaking. So it's getting you found, getting you booked, and getting you paid, and showing you how to set up a profile that is going to attract people to you, but then also how to actively go out and find speaking engagements. So there's two things I have coming up. On the 23rd of May, what we're in now, June. On the 23rd of June, I'm running a 2-hour masterclass. It's called the Profitable Speaker Profiles Masterclass. And I literally talk you through, right at the beginning where I said I didn't have a website, I just whacked up, I talk you through how to set up a profile that works from where you are right now. So I go through in depth what you do with LinkedIn, what you do with YouTube, what you do with your website, what you do with your biography. And I mean step by step. For anybody who's listening to this, if you quote that this is where you came from, I'm going to give you £50 off your fee. That's it. Like, done. Boom. So that's happening on the 23rd of June. Now, for those people who were like, 2020 was going to be my year, I was going to get myself on them stages, and then Corona happened. I work with women, helping women to find stages. So I have my signature program is called the Find Speaking Gigs Accelerator. Effectively, what I did was bottled up everything that I learned from a sales perspective and the systems and processes which work in both parts of your business to teach women how to find speaking engagements. Like, literally, you cannot do this program and come out of it and not know how to find speaking engagements. And I task you with the idea of finding at least 200. Most people get at least 60% of the way there, like over 100 easily. And that's normally within the 2 days that we actually work together. But most people get at least 100 to 200 speaking engagements. And I work with you to reach out to them. So I tell you what to say, how to say it. I help you tailor your pitch. When you get into those negotiations, you got me in your corner. I'll be right there. I'll be like, girl, don't answer that one. Pause on that. Phrase it like this. But it's not just that. I tell you why we do it like that. It's a group program. I'm in pre-launch at the moment, so the sales page isn't fully up. It's like special rates. Again, if you want to find out about that, just connect in, tell me where you come from. I'll give you like a special bonus. That is starting in August, at the end of August, which is perfect timing because most organizers actually book their speakers about 6 to 9 months out. So people are like, oh, should I wait? The speaking industry will start opening up. I've got some gigs booked towards the end of this year. I'm not 100% sure they're going to go forward, but in 2021, we'll start to see speaking engagements come back out. And two things are going to happen then. One, there's going to be a lot of hungry speakers who haven't been on stage for a while. So if your profile has not been refined and updated in this time, you're going to be up against some seriously stiff competition. And secondly, those who get out, the process of finding gigs takes a moment. Like, it's kind of like learning how to coach. You don't go and do that for a little bit and then like poof, you're an expert coacher. You're refined and you know exactly how it's going to work. So it does take a moment for you to start to kind of build that momentum. So if you're starting at the end of August and using the latter part of this year to build the momentum, then you're ready to freaking soar as soon as all of this stuff kicks off. So if you're interested in either of those programs, get in touch, but like listen to the podcast, lovelda.com/podcast.
Boom. Boom.
Boom.
You know, I was listening to somebody's podcast just the other day, and it was so inspiring, and I was just like frothing at the mouth. And that amazing person asked the audience, "What is your power tool?"
It's totes my podcast.
Just testing you. And it was such an awesome question. It was so amazing. And I would just love to know.
So my 3 power tools, so I define them on my podcast as if I were to take, so I ask every single guest on the podcast exactly the same question. So I've pretty much brought together powerful women and then said, what the heck is it that makes you tick? Like, why are you as good as you are? And the core premise and the question I ask every single guest is, if I was to take everything that you've done in life and business today and all of your success, and I was to boil it down to literally just 3 core things, like just mash it up and say, here are the 3 things that have been fundamental and pivotal to me having the level of success that I've had, what would they be? And so it's like a super mean question. I ask every single one of them, and it's really cool. So for me, I think my first tool would probably be trust. And it's very multi-layered. So growing up, my mother was, my poor mom, she's going to start listening to my interviews and think I'm bashing her. It's not at all. My mom's incredible. But my mom decided she was raising 3 strong, independent women. Like, I just remember, like, strong, independent was like just built into my DNA. And, but I interpreted that as meaning like, I just need, if it's to be done, it's gonna need to be done by me. And so a lot of the time when I was doing stuff, I pushed a lot. Like, it was high stress and a lot of pushing, and it took a while until I could find the balance between the idea of manifestation, which initially I just thought was humana, sit down, woo woo. Let's, like, if I sit here and think about shit, it's gonna happen, and forcing things, like forcing them before they're ready, not taking those hints, not just kind of feeling into it. And so for me, trust is about trusting myself, that I can do it. I'm okay. I'm held. I'll be safe. I can bounce back if it doesn't work. I've got this. Trusting in others, that I can be supported, that they can be of service, that they can do their jobs, that but mainly for me it was like trusting others in relation to supporting me in the way that, and allowing them to do that. And then the third area is trusting the universe, like trusting that the universe is always conspiring for my success. So if something doesn't go right now, and by right I mean the way I feel it needs to be right now, however it is precisely what it needs to be. Because over the time when I've looked back, you know, when you kind of turn around and you look back and you're like, oh shit, this is because of these reasons. Over time when I've looked back, things have always been absolutely perfect. And some of the work is to be done by me, but some of my work is in allowing the universe to serve me, allowing others to serve me, allowing myself to try. And it'll be silly things. I'll give you an example. I used to be a serious workaholic where I couldn't take a day off. And part of the reason I couldn't take a day off was because I didn't trust that shit would be done. Like, if I had that day off, other things wouldn't happen and blah, 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 blah. But what I also saw is when I was working full time, if I woke up and everything about me was not in the mood to meet with people, my clients canceled their meetings. I never had to cancel. They just canceled the meetings for me. And so when I can start to notice that stuff, I then go, oh shit, I didn't want to work. And the universe let me off. Like, it just let me off. It was like, you don't need to work today. It's fine. Like, so I could go in and be in that bubble. And so I got to the point, you know, for me, one of the things that I know is fundamental is to just trust. If I'm feeling it, I go for it and I don't question it. And if I'm not feeling it, I stop and I don't question it. despite what I can see around me and what my logical mind is saying. Because there's been times I've created incredible things, and literally at the moment I went to create it, everything about me told me this shit should not happen. You should not be able to create a couture event in 30 days, almost literally to the day, from zero, like a couture fashion show from nothing in 30 days. You should not be able to find designers overnight. You shouldn't be able to turn around this. Anytime I have kind of just focused on where I'm going and trusted that everything else would fall into place, I've always been held. And anytime I've thought I know better than the universe, it's given me a royal kick up the butt, and I've been reminded I'm just not that clever.
You are too gorgeous. I absolutely love that. You really are a woman after my own heart. I so respect and revere and honour that whatever is happening is really there for a reason, and to really trust that. And I love what I hear you say, and you lead by example. You are your word, and I love that. To call you inspiring is an understatement. I think we need a new word to really sincerely describe what you have given me. It was a big act of courage for me to ask you. You're a really big fish, a beautiful big fish. And I asked you and you said yes to this. And that just shows me the universe knows what she's doing. And it's just the most amazing mystery. And just to go with that trust and go with that gut feeling and just relax and not overwork. I'm a real advocate of not overworking. My clients cancelled on me this week when I was really didn't have the energy, and I thought, yes, and they're so apologetic. I'm like, no, it's fine.
I don't think you understand. It's absolutely brilliant.
No problem. Well, I believe what's right for me is also what's right for you in every dynamic. And I just love and praise you for who you are, who you're being, and that joyful presentation of life that you are being and that you are sharing. I just think you are awesome.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to tell you a story that's I think will help. You like story time?
I love
and it's related to something that you said in terms of I actually read a LinkedIn article about it. It's not published yet. And I was writing about interviewing tips, like how do you interview and somebody that is an influencer? Because I've had the challenge a few times where you're like, yeah, fuck, who's this? Oh my God, this is the Prime Minister. Oh my God, this was, you like those moments. And there's one interview that I did that really helped me to see the humanity, because you forget. And I think the way I positioned it was, when I did this interview, I kind of got to see that anytime I'm intimidated, I have a feeling of intimidation about somebody, I'm ignoring their humanity. So when I went to interview Monica Lewinsky, it was unplanned, because literally up until that point, leading up to this, I knew I was going to be introducing her. She was coming to do a version of her TEDx talk, which is incredible, or her TED talk even. If you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it. It's an incredible talk. And she now does a lot of stuff around the advocate of, or she's now a real, I can't think of the word, she's all about anti-cyberbullying because of what happened to her in the precise moment in which it happened. And I'd done a bunch of research because I had to introduce her anyway. And I didn't want to go with the like cliche, blah, blah, blah stuff. But I'd been told that by her team and the team that I was working with, that she was not going to be taking any questions. She was going to come, she was going to do her talk. There would be 0 questions. It was very strict. There was 0 questions, 0 video, 0 photographs. Like it was not allowed, not permitted. And about 2 hours before she was due to go on, I'm emceeing, I get a tap on the shoulder. There's somebody on the stage, I get a tap on the shoulder. Oh, by the way, Lovelda, Monica's changed her mind and she'll take some questions. She'll take like a handful of questions after she speaks. But we understand like you haven't had time to prep. So do you want to do it, or we're happy to find somebody else? First thing, when opportunity knocks, say yes and figure out the frick how later, right? I've learned that one. Just say yes and figure out how, because they wouldn't be asking me if I wasn't capable. And plus, there was no chance in hell I was going to miss it. I was like, I'd watched so much of her stuff by this point. I was like, I need to meet this woman. So there was a break. They took me to the back. I went into this room. They left me in the room. It's just me and Monica. And I was shocked because she was nervous. And not a little bit nervous. She was a little bit terrified from what I could see. And she'd and I found myself in the position I'm with so many speakers, which is one of compassion, because not everybody who is on a stage is excited. Like sometimes they've been ferried out there from their company and then they arrive and they're like, how many people? Like I've done rooms of 100, but this is like 2,000 and 2,000 looks like a lot and it's a big stage and So I've had those moments behind the stage with many a speaker where I've had to be that person where even if I'm nervous because I'm about to go on, I need to pull my shit together because I don't want to be with somebody who's that scared. And when I stepped out of that room, apart from kind of going, oh my God, I'm speaking to Monica, I'm never going to wash my hands again. Apart from that moment, what I remembered was, do you know what? She's another human having another human experience, which means that she too has hopes and dreams and fears and concerns and terrors and things that are that she's intimidated by, et cetera, et cetera. It's not any different. And so I think it's always useful just to remember that regardless of who it is, and that's not to say that you won't have your moments, ladies, but like, I know if you're listening, y'all are destined for big things. But regardless of who it is and what they've achieved, they too have had challenges. They too have had their hopes dashed. They too have had failures. They're human. They just happen to have had a bigger impact, but they also have the same human requirements and basic human desires as anybody else. And it's never going to serve you to rock up in front of them like, oh my God, I love you. Because now you're in fan category. People will be like, what? So I think so long as you can just remember that people are human. And I mean, some people are human and slightly cocky, but most people are human and human. They're nice people and they're cool to talk to. So I just wanted to share that story.
That's a really, really lovely story. And it's, of course, it's the vulnerability of her saying, oh, actually, I'm really nervous. And I just love that we are all in the human boat together. We're all doing the human life, the humanity experience. We're all doing that. We all get sad. We all get happy. We all get disheartened sometimes. And that humanity that joins us, I find one of the most beautiful things about being here.
Oh, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just connect with people. You're like, You just have these like beautiful little magic moments that you weren't anticipating. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And just the spark of, I was walking down the seafront this morning and there was this guy walking along with the coolest mod haircut. Like he was a silver fox. He was just rocking. He was owning his look. And I just said, I love your haircut. And he went, I love your hat. And it was just a spark. It was a moment of, I appreciate you, I see you. And I live for these moments. These moments happen all the time. And I just think by showing up online, by connecting and doing these things, it's just a celebration of humanity, of the funny stuff, the quirky stuff, all of it I embrace and I celebrate it. And I just really respect and love that you do that, and you do it with the divine feminine grace of a goddess.
Oh, it took a moment.
Amen.
It was a journey, girl. It was a journey, but I made it. I ain't going back. Yeah. That other place is crazy town.
To have people reporting from the top of the mountain saying, come up here, it's a really lovely view, is just so, it's it. I think that this is such a beautiful thing. So
thank you for having me here. I've loved it. Thank you so much. And thanks for the beautiful question.